We turn to former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Bill Richardson. Bill, nice to have you with us tonight. We want to draw on your extensive experience in this very troubling time for the globe right now. And I want to start tonight by asking you, if you were in the room with the president, what would you be recommending? Would it be an airstrike?
I would recommend an airstrike, but provided there's evidence. I think Secretary Mathis, who's the grown-up in the room, is saying let's have hard evidence. I think that makes sense. However, the evidence seems eventually to be there. The French government says it has evidence. The fact that Russia unfortunately vetoed a Security Council resolution yesterday that would have allowed an investigation points to the fact that Syria did use these chemical weapons before. They were punished by a military strike. I think it's inevitable that we have a military strike, but I think it makes sense. It doesn't have to be immediate. Let's get the hard evidence. Let's get France and Britain that are ready to use military force to get authorization from their legislatures, from their government, their process, and then let's see what the evidence leads to. But let's find a way with Russia and Iran, especially Russia. Maybe something can be worked out, but there has to be a proportionate response to the atrocities that Syria has made in that area.
And what about the somewhat mixed messages, what General Mattis said today and what Nikki Haley has said at the UN? And you've been in those diplomatic situations before. Is it possible to get wires crossed, or are we just talking about verbiage here? What do you make of that?
Well, we still have mixed messages. I think Mattis has been correct in wanting evidence. He's the one that authorizes and initiates the military operation. I think Nikki Haley, too. She gets the Security Council resolutions. She's outraged on human rights ground at what's happened. The problem is the president, his tweets. First, he says we're going to withdraw troops from Syria. That's going to send a message to Russia, Iran, and Syria that, maybe we wait this out. Then the president says we're going to strike in 24 or 48 hours. And then he says maybe we're not going to strike right away. You can't tweet diplomacy early in the morning without checking with your advisors and having a coordinated response with your allies. This is a continuing problem that doesn't seem to be ready to be fixed. The president's not going to change. He's going to keep doing this. So what he does is he puts a lot of smothering on Mattis, even on John Bolton, to act in a way that protects our interests. They're outflanked by the president's tweets in the morning that he does without any discussion and any advice.
He certainly seems to tweet before he thinks. There's no question about that. Does the stated response by Russia that they will respond if Syria is attacked, does that bother you? And how do you play through that dynamic?
Well, it does bother me because, what I think the president's delays and his contrary tweets allows, for instance, Russian soldiers, Russian military to move into Syrian sites. And what if we bomb a Syrian site, maybe not within Syria, or an Iranian site, and it includes the death of Russians and Iranians? I mean, they have to find a way to respond. My view is that cooler heads would prevail. And I think here's an opportunity at the end, after the presumed military action, for Russia and the United States to really find a way. Look, Russia must know that Assad is a loser. He causes Russia enormous problems. He has no support. He violates human rights. He does chemical attacks. Find a political transition that involves elections, UN supervision, a long-term deal that only the U.S. and Russia can push through. Iran is an important player, but I think Iran would probably go along if Russia agrees to. So here's a potential U.S.-Russia deal that might help a relationship that right now is in terrible shape. Ed, over arms control, over Syria, over Iran, over Yemen, over so many other issues.
Well, it's going to be hard to think of a deal if the United States does strike, and it's going to certainly complicate things. What about Iran? What if they get involved in this? How concerned are you that this could escalate into something that could possibly spiral out of control? And then, of course, there's conversation on Capitol Hill about having the authority to do this. I see that as a year late. The president's already hit Syria once. Here we go again. But now there is the equation of possibly Iran getting involved in this. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm concerned, too. I think there's that possibility, an Iranian clash, hopefully not an enormously serious one, with Israel. That's a danger. That's one. The second is Iran and the United States, especially since the president has to make a decision on the Iran deal by May 12th, which I think he should keep based just on the nuclear agreement. Maybe we can get our allies to find a missile agreement with Iran that keeps the U.S. nuclear deal with Iran alive, but that's uncertain. The timing of all this, especially with the upcoming summit with North Korea, is very tenuous. So I think the more we tweet and provoke Iran and Russia and Syria, it's all right, because Syria does not deserve any kind of consideration. It just complicates things. The president should let Secretary Mattis, let his diplomats find a way to deal with this, work with Britain, work with France, and possibly, I think there's going to have to be a military response to this outrage, but do it in a way that advances diplomacy, advances a dialogue, that Putin and the president can find a way at the end. All right, you know, let's find a way to get out of this mess.
Yeah. Well, we know what the Russian policy is in Syria. You know, they're an ally of the Syrians, and that's not going to change. They apparently are fine with Assad being in power, but the stated position of the United States has really not been clarified to the globe. And now that John Bolton is in the mix, who knows, the president's not getting advice. Maybe this is a time to take Assad out if they can locate him. Is that a possibility?
Well, no, I just think that, you know, I know everyone criticizes Bolton, and I know his views. You know, he's a hardliner. But, you know, when you're advising the President of the United States on war and peace issues, on potential of American soldiers and military involvement, you got to be careful. And I think this is an opportunity that Russia has to realize. Look at all the problems Assad keeps causing Russia. Yeah. I know Russia makes money on military deals with Syria, but, you know, this is an untenable situation. Assad has no support in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, in the Middle East. I think Putin is a smart guy. He's going to see maybe the best solution is a transition where Assad gets out. That's my thought. But we have to wait and see. It's a very tenuous, serious situation.
All right, Bill. And finally, your thoughts. Are we making progress with North Korea? You feel better about it now than the last time we visited? I mean, Kim Jong-un's trip to China and where we stand right now, and there seems to be some back-channel conversation about what kind of meeting Kim Jong-un and the president might have.
I feel a little better. I think there is planning going on. They're talking about releasing the 3 Americans, the remains of our soldiers. They're talking about where they're going to meet. I think the fact that Pompeo, the new Secretary of State-to-be, is reaching out to diplomats, reaching out. I saw he called Hillary Clinton and John Kerry. I think that's smart after what Secretary Tillerson did to the State Department. You know, unfortunately, he decimated a lot of the diplomats there. So I feel a little better, but I still feel we need to be prepared and realistic on what's going to happen there.
Bill Richardson, it's always wonderful to have you with us. Appreciate your insight. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Appreciate it.